afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the NSCAC Presents Behind the Bench. My name is Valerio Rocca. I'm the Vice President of the NSCAC. And today we have two special guests with us. We have Nuno Andre Nunes, who's the Senior Lecturer Football Coaching. He's got a PhD in Sports Science, and he's a Master's Physical Education teacher. We also have Gregory Halle Petiot, who's the NCCP registered soccer coach, is a UEFA A candidate. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you very much for taking time out of your day to come and do a presentation for us. How are you guys doing today?
Very good. Yourself?
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, it's already evening, so finishing up my one.
Our topic today is the science behind played form practice. So Greg and Nuno will go through a presentation with us. Just a little bit of housekeeping. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask during the presentation, just put it inside the Q&A portion of the Zoom call, and we'll try to answer them as best as we can throughout the presentation. Okay? Greg and Nuno, it's all yours.
Good, brilliant. So I'll set up the presentation, and Nuno will have a lot of insights to provide to you. It seems that we have a very broad an audience today, coming from many places around. So my concern now is just to put this on, and let also Nuno introduce himself. So just a quick introductory. So we will be talking today about a framework for played form practice, which basically encompasses all the possibilities of played form formats, ways to do it, coaching it, etc. A bit of science behind it based on ecological dynamics. We'll be covering that. So what I invite you to do is scan this QR code, because there will be an interactive Q&A. Basically, it's voting, polling, some polls in there as long as we go. And whilst you're doing that, I will leave the stage to Nuno to introduce a bit and the kind of insights he will be providing along the presentation.
Hi, everyone. So good morning to you. And so it is a pleasure to be here with you today. My name is Nuno. I am Portuguese, but I'm based in UK, and I'm working in UK for a long time. I'm currently the Senior Lecturer of Football Coaching with Solent University. We indeed have some Canadian students within our football studies bachelor degree. So it's always a pleasure to collaborate with you guys, and to be able to give a little bit about what my expertise is. My PhD thesis was all about small-sided games, the constraint manipulation, a constraint-led approach through in ecological dynamics. So I hope that I can give you a little bit of insights on that. Also, I think it's a good opportunity for you to have a Portuguese accent, and you are looking like having Mourinho talking to you, I guess. So yeah, any questions, just drop on the chat. I'm more than happy to pick them up later on.
Brilliant. Awesome. Let's go with it. So the QR code basically leads to a page that you can browse on your cell phone. There's some quick questions that you can participate to. Going forward right away, basically, yes, so that's a quick overview of Nunes' curriculum, a quick overview of my curriculum. So I've been doing some research in Brazil, psychopedagogy back in my province at the University de Laval in Canada. I also do the same UEFA B and A licenses that Nuno did with Scottish FA. I also have an executive sport management program with CIES FIFA, which I did remotely from Canada with a Costa Rican university, and some coaching experience. Now coaching at Concordia, not a university, but a regional association with a studies and sport program. So for some Quebecers that might join us, they might know this program. So right into the topic, basically what I wanted to cover today is a quick, I wanted to start off with a quick overview of what is a coach applying platform practice. From platform practice, what I understand is that any platform with a position, any activities with a position, with a fraction of the play is already a platform activity. So one-on-one would be a platform activity. It depends on how we do articulate it. So when I understand that we as coaches apply the platform activity, we basically are providers of opportunities. So we provide opportunities for training, maintaining the level, learning, acquiring some skills, and we're the designers of possibilities. The two go together. So if we provide some opportunities, basically we design some possibilities of actions. But rather than asking players to do something, we provide a platform. So we design the possibilities within these platforms. What I want to introduce now is the notion of context, because that will be probably the biggest hashtag or the biggest keyword of our presentation today. So by context is basically whenever we use constraint-led approach or nonlinear pedagogy, differential learning, you probably heard this in some TikToks, movies, or around in some magazines. These are quite scientific theories, but what they do is basically they articulate what's in the context. So when we have a small-sided area in which we have a 4-on-4, that's one context. When we have a double box in which we attack on one big goal and counterattack on 3 little goals, that's another context. So I want to emphasize the importance of context today, and emphasize also the importance of variety of that context. So as we provide opportunities, we design the possibilities. Basically, we have all advantages to design a lot of variety in these contexts. I'm sure that Nuno will have a lot of to add to that. Just continuing, basically what we will do today is explore the characteristic of these contexts, the contents that we can push into these contexts, and the purpose of our designs. So up to you, Nuno, but probably you can add more about the keyword context.
The context molds everything around the activity itself. It should be the context that provide the opportunities for our players to develop, to engage, to learn from the action, and that's one of the most important concepts from an ecological dynamics perspective as the platform activities. By varying different type of contexts, we are providing different opportunities for development, and then it's up to us coaches, it's up to you guys to decide how, or to understand how the context will dictate the action of your players, and that's here that Gregory has been doing a great job in terms of platform activities, because he's providing reasons for and different possibilities for coaches to work and to develop certain principles according with their needs, according to with their teams, and according with the objective of the session. Gregory, up to you.
Yes, so yeah, I already see that you've been putting a lot of different keywords here. So the little QR code is basically just to introduce the conversation. And I see that some of you, the participants, have been putting in some keywords here on the page of the QR code. So to introduce platform activities, we see that basically realism, the game, the players, the references, to be specific, this is what you basically understand about platform activities. And if I go forward, to do the link between, basically, we just described that we wanted to link the platform activity with the context, because context is king, context is key, context is very, very important. Now, what we do in that context is also very important. So according to you, which of these theories are associated to platform practice? So you can follow the same link. You don't have to refresh. Normally it should update by itself. And the participant could already be participating to that. So we got some theories such as the teaching game for understanding, which is very, very popular in physical education. We also have differential learning, which has been talked about and covered, associated with Thomas Tuchel work. He does a lot of that. Arteta, he does a lot of that as well. Non-linear pedagogy is probably more in the shadow because, and I invite you, Nuno, to add onto that. Non-linear pedagogy is basically the theory that supports the fact that there's no A, B, C. There's no sequential stuff that players learn. There's some various pathways, and the content doesn't come in order. So to embrace that, basically what researchers did, make some recommendations from science to accept that nothing is linear and drive a pathway of learning, training that is based on this nonlinearity, and just provide some opportunities to develop or to train aspects of the game, but not in sequence. Constraint-led approach is something that Nuno has mentioned before, is basically adding some constraint either to the environment or the task or the individual as well, to challenge, solicit his abilities to solve the problems, to perform some movements. And finally, the ecological dynamics, which was part of the title, is basically beginning from the context itself, beginning from what happens on the pitch to understand how can we shape the different components of practice. So beginning from what happens on the field. We see that here we have some results coming in. And Nuno, do you think there's one that is more important than the other, or do you think that all of them are very relevant in terms of platform practice?
No, they in my perspective, I don't know if the participants didn't know that, but they could choose more than one option, right, Gregory? If they believe that it's more than one, they could use it. And no, I don't think I can give importance to one or other specific, as I think the platform activities can englobe and can have all of them. As it is a training, as it is, we're just talking about each one of them. You summarize each one of them really well in terms of theoretical concepts behind them. So it is like the training football. So I don't think I can separate. I can separate. I can separate components. I can separate characteristics, and I don't think I can separate these important pedagogical and theoretical concepts behind the platform activities and behind the training session.
I think we pretty much have 5 theories that all apply to platform practice.
It does.
And as you mentioned, constraint-led approach, that's part of your PhD. Basically, what it means is that instead of just stepping in and intervene right away, is that we begin from constraints, and constraints are attached to the context that we mentioned before. Moving on. So what we will be doing now is returning on this. And what I would propose to you is basically consider that to customize your environment of play, as I mean, to contextualize the practice as much as we want, there would be 4 main questions: the where, the how, the what, the why. The where will basically be the context that we'll be investing a lot of explanations on that. The how is the result of the configuration and settings and parameters of this context with game rules, the width, the depth, etc. So that will result basically in some characteristic. Is it more complete, less complete? Is it more representative, less representative? We'll see that in a minute. The what is the content that we push in, and the why is why do we do that activity that we configured. I invite you to also scan this QR code that leads to a paper that talks about these formats. And why did I do all this introduction slaloming with some theories? Is basically because to say that the context is that important, we have work with Kate Davids, etc., with Mike Vitulano as well, to try to do a continuum, to draw a continuum of 5 standard contexts. And in each of these contexts, they do provide their set of affordances. They do provide their set of possibilities of play. And they do organize the play in their own way. So this is basically what illustrates or what portrays the importance of context, because when you invest in context, you could do an exercise like that, which is more about repetition of one-on-one 2v2s. You have the very famous small-sided games. You have the very famous also analytical, which is very present in any license. Either at the Scottish FA, we had to do that. In the Canadian or CONCACAF, we do have a lot of formats like this in the session. Some condition game, which is wider, and obviously the full game. Why did I talk about constrained approach? Is because each of these contexts could be settled, could be setted, could be configured with some constraints. Why did I talk about nonlinear pedagogy? Because in one session, we could have one of this, and one of this, and one of this, or in order or in disorder. Basically, what it means is that if we invest a lot in context, we have to understand what the context provides to the players, and what platform does it mean for the coaches to intervene, stop the play, correct, or just shout some cues from the sidelines. And all of this, the science behind that is very important. So up to you, Nuno, what can you add about these contexts?
I always get this sentence in my head from a very famous coach. So his name is Leonard Jardim. So he was the coach at Monaco when Kylian Mbappe, when Bernardo Silva, they came up and they won the French league. I was on talking with him a couple of months ago, and he spoke to me about something that's, he stuck with me. We cannot reduce the task. We can simplify, but we cannot take the context out of the practice. So decontext scenarios, contexts won't happen in any part of the training session. So there was something that he put me to think about the term of simplification without decomposing the work, without making without taking the necessary context for players and teams to develop. And I think this links perfectly with what Gregory wants to tell you. So he simplifies us. We need to, as a coach, we need to simplify different parts of our session according with our needs, according with our players, but never taking the context out of play. Always providing tasks that allow the players to constantly thinking and constantly understanding the ever-changing environment that is a football match. And again, I keep telling to all of my students, asking them any reasons for any kind of tasks that they can propose without opposition, without direction, without an intent principle to develop.
Since everything that you mentioned, Nuno, can be quite complex for players depending on their level of competencies and where they are at now in their pathway, the act of simplification is quite key for any coach. And one way to present the simplification, or emphasizing, as I call, so in all of these formats, you could emphasize one aspect of the game without decontextualize. You don't want to pull out the player out of this context to try to work some stuff and then by magic re-pitching inside the context. You want to work from within the context. So whether you want some more or less complex context. You also could read in terms of affordances. So in open-ended drills is still one context, but you have a limited bandwidth of affordances. Affordances means basically possibilities of actions. So in one-on-one, 2v2s, you basically have very limited bandwidth of these possibilities of play. In SSCGs, they already multiply. They have a broadened bandwidth of affordances. In analytical game, because it's more contextualized, basically you have a contextualized bandwidth of affordances. Some are featured with more emphasis than in other formats of play. In condition games, basically they're targeted bandwidth of affordances, because what you want with the conditions is to stick as close as possible to the reality, the realism of the game, but then you target the possibilities of play that you want to practice, and this increases or reaches the amount of repetition that you are seeking for. And in full games, basically, that's the realistic bandwidth of affordances, because they're all the moments of the play are present, etc. And so it increases the overall realism. So we can see that from one format to the other, you increase in complexity, you increase in realism, but you also increase in specificity of the possibilities of play that you're seeking for. Thus, you're not controlling your player, you're just providing the most coherent platform for practice. So I invite you to scan this QR code, because all of the information that I provided and I will provide in the two next slides are in this paper that has been published last summer.
Gregory, can I just returning to what you said before, I would also like to understand later on, so if you have time at the end, opinions from those attending here today, if they actually use the full game on their practices, because it's actually kind of depending on the coach and depending on the beliefs around the full game. I have been talking with coaches that never use the 11v11, or at least 11v11 on a full pitch, and I have other ones saying that that's something that they have to do it. So it's actually could. I would like to leave the challenge for later on for the attendees to come up with their opinion around the 11v11. So then potentially we can discuss later on.
It's a brilliant question, because as the continuum suggests, well, the 11 against 11, or it could be 8v8, 7v7, depending on the championship that you're participating or your kids.
Yeah.
But definitely it's part of the continuum. So the question is very relevant in the sense that if you have an opinion, please do share. So continuing with the same source of information, here is some analysis that my colleagues and I have been doing. Is basically when you are playing, there are some shapes. Imagine you can picture any sort of SSCG, any small-sided game, but most will be assimilated to 3 directions of action. So that's the standard action. You go from you go deeper, you go sideways, but then you could also have these centric in and outwards sense of play depending on the shape, and you also have circular around a certain shape to solicit some behaviors or to provoke some behaviors. And what it says is basically, without asking players to go out wide, the shape just influences the side and the direction of action, because what it is inherent from the design and the configuration of the play is that the aims, the targets are where you want actions to go towards. And this basically is a food for thoughts. So can centric and circular help the problem of width in younger players? Well, we think that it does help, because without asking them to go wide in one format like this, for example, we could just change the configuration of the play that influences them to go out wide, and it just develops some behaviors. So this is in relation to another article that the older the wider. So you can see, you can picture that if you have an under 17 and you have a thematic with any session play out from the wide areas, they will probably do it naturally or follow the thematic. But if you do the same thing with under 11 that are incipient in their pathway, that might not be as natural. So this is why the relevancy of these, because of the inherent sense and direction of the play, could help them go in these areas without necessarily asking or obligating them to do so in a analytical game, for example. Following that, these are some more examples of formats. So we see that here we have two 1v1s basically, and the 1v1 they can connect depending on the movements, and they have several targets to aim for. And then we have one centric hexagonal small-sided game with some targets. We have one analytical that is limited to one side of the pitch, and we have one Foninho almost full pitch with to basically I would say provoke some behaviors. So out of these examples, it would be interesting to have your opinions. The audience, what do you think about these formats? I have another poll that is on the website here. So the same, whoops, sorry about that. These are some questions on the poll on the WooClap. So what concept is associated to play from practice context? When you shape the context, we've been seeing that there's direction of the play, the width, the depth, etc. So by wanting to know what do you think about the formats and the standardized I would say pictures and illustration that we provided, what do you think that is most associated to play from practice context? When you shape the context, what do you aim for? What do you configure? What parameters do you use in order to influence one of these? In the meantime, Nuno, if you have anything to add, please do so.
I do have, and I think you are forgetting something important, Gregory, in terms of discontinue. You were looking at complexities, you were looking at different shapes and to develop certain technical tactical requirements, the player itself. But these formats, guys, and that's for own experience, the different formats that you can find. Can you send the other slide, Greg, the last one that you show, the next one? Yeah. So all of these ones, they promote something that's unfortunately we as a coach are started to miss in our teams, which is development of creativity in our players. So there is a great framework as well created by Sara Santos and Diogo Coutinho and all of their colleagues that developed the creativity framework based on these theoretical principles as well. That's Gregory who has been talking to you guys, and apart from this allows the continue now proposed by Gregory gives you a platform to understand practice design. This also by providing different shapes, by promoting different type of goals, different numbers, different relationship between your players. They are developing the creativity. They are understanding how the environment is changing, and they are adapting and learning from what the task is providing, because the position of the balls, the position of the opposings, the teammates' positions will always be different in each one of the moments. And we return to one of the most important, again, sentence, and this sentence is from 60s though, which is the repetition without repetition. It's the ability of keep providing players with opportunities to act, to opportunities to develop in a ever-changing environment. We are almost, if we potentially the audience here is not the same generation as I used to be, and I'm not sure, but I played street soccer So I play there. I played in the streets with my friends, in my village. And this almost provides this same environment where players are discovering themselves, are trying new techniques, are trying new abilities to overcome obstacles and to develop a certain their own certain way to play football, to play soccer. Gregory said something before about the coach providing some tips outside. This is important as well because we don't want to teach how to perform a specific technique. We want the player to be able to adapt his or her own position, his or her own ability to perform certain techniques, certain skills that are adjusted to their own behaviors, adjusted to their own body, based on what they are observing and they are looking from the environment. And we are forgetting, I think, in my perspective, the enrichment of this type of context, of varying the type of task.
I think it just loops back to the very introduction that we provided at the beginning of the presentation. So variety is key, context is key, but also what we do want is to provide a platform so the players express themselves. And then within that platform, there's a density of repetition, a repetition of a certain moment or a certain gesture, of a certain movement, synchronization, etc. So what we want to do is basically provide a platform so that the players explore that potential for repetition. But we also want the context to provide inherently to provide the possibilities of actions that we seek for or we target. Otherwise, it would be too open. So I think it's a fair middle point between too open or too close. We don't want some isolated repetition, and we don't want some too open games where there's no sort of control or aiming for or targeting a certain action. We want to use these platforms in these formats to our advantage as coaches to target the stuff that we want to emerge in the play. And both of Nuno and their perspectives are on the slides are the two messages are very, very clear, but basically it is for you to choose what resonates the most to your mind. And once you choose, basically you have the potential to bring this play to life, adapting with variety and the specificity in the context. So before to go, I will just go back on our poll right here. So we have some answers. Shape of playing area with a sense of play. We see that that's important. Delimited area of the pitch. Situation of play with the numbers of players. Basically, by changing the number of players, you change the space available. The configuration of area and game rules. So we've seen in the Foninho, we had 3 corridors or 3 regions. These are game rules that can be attached to it. A structure, basically asking one team to play in 2-3 and the other team to play in 3-2 might be also something interesting to do. And it feeds the variety that Nuno was referring before. So that closes basically the first half of our presentation. And what is to follow is just adding on to the context. So I will be trying to speed up. I don't know, Valerio, do you want to open for some questions? What do you wish to do from here?
Right now, there's no questions in the section, so I think we'll just continue with the presentation. And if something pops up, I'll stop you in between a slide and ask for it if it's pertaining to what you guys have been discussing.
Okay, brilliant. So I'll carry on with this. So I was mentioning earlier that when you configure any of these, basically, it results in I would say characteristics. So it might be more or less representative. It might be more or less specific, integral, complex, difficult, and it is important for us to detect whether it is more or less representative, specific, etc. So let me propose some definitions for you. Representativeness that has been praised in nonlinear pedagogy, for example, is it is explained or defined by, is it faithfully reflecting the original setting of the game in the customized context of play? So you have one of these. So is it representative if it faithfully reflects the original setting? So in an 11-a-side game, it would be fully reflecting the original setting. Whereas, for example, in an hexagonal small-sided game from inwards to outwards, it will be less representative. Specificity objectively leads towards the aim game model. So the way that we want to play, the way that I seek my team to play, is it, does my context objectively leads toward that, because I have key players, I have key moments of the game, etc., designed inherently from the organization of my context of play. The integrality now reflects a complete version of the play within the delimited fraction of the game. That means, for example, if you have a possession game, it might not be a complete version because there's no shooting or blocking. And that is basically one of the things that is most discussed, that has been mostly discussed in my studies in Portugal, because from a North American perspective, I remember that in one period of time, about 5 years, around 2013, my club was valorizing a lot the possession games. Square, 2 teams or 3 teams, 2 against 1 team, and then a lot of possession. But these do not reflect the complete version because there's no possibilities to shoot. So this is one very much discussed characteristic of the play. Another one is the duality of complexity and difficulty. So more, sorry for the French, more possibilities of actions, less complex, more difficult. So that means a one-on-one, the opponent will be expecting you to dribble. So it is less complex, but more difficult because there's less possibilities of actions. If you have a 10-on-10, 8-on-8, 8 against 6, that might be more possibilities of actions. You can shoot, you can pass, you can dribble, you can do a lot of things. More complex because you have more available players, more opponents depending on the number and the ratio of opponents, but less difficult as well because there's always an exit. There's always a possibilities of play that will simplify the problem experienced by players. So all of these characteristics have to be tracked, and coaches have to pay attention to the result of their configuration, because that may pay out or that may hinder the outcome, the desired outcome or targeted outcome from training. Nuno, what do you think of this?
I think I won't add any kind of more theoretical knowledge to what you said, but I want our attendees to think about what we just discussed before. When we are doing on a 1v1, there are less possibility of action, is less complex, but it's more difficult. And if you can now rely, or if you can start thinking about individual sports and team sports, you can also look at this. So if we can have, when we think that we are making the task easier for our players by reducing the number, is not always the case. We may even make the task harder because of this, because of there will be less possibilities for action, there will be less, the task itself will be less complex. While if we include more players, we are relying on other players, we are relying on other opposings as well, that will give us more possibilities to perform action, and therefore ability to succeed more on the task.
This is a huge message for the kind of challenges that coaches provide to players, because at some point you as coach, you have an idea of, you have desired outcome, a certain organization that you target in your mind. You don't see it, you don't see it, you don't see it. It might be because it's too difficult. It might be because it's too complex. So playing with these characteristics also help out. It is a good gauge. It is gauging. It is measuring the kind of you can make a link between the response from the players and the kind of context that you put them in. Following in, basically, what we can do is we can scale these characteristics. It could be more representative, more divergent, in the sense that that's the opposite of representative. It could be more integral or more fragmented. And then while we are, I would say, scaling the every characteristic, this could be also reflecting the drawing. So you have a drawing like this, that would be one of these. You have a drawing like this, that would probably be the analytical, because it is more fragmented, but also more representative. And this one, the condition game with 3 corridors, would be the green one, because it's more representative and more integral. So scaling these characteristics, it is very, very helpful to track the characteristic and the output, the result of the configuration. Now, I think this is probably the biggest biggest take-home message that in my studies in Brazil and in Portugal, I withdraw from my experience. And I will leave Nuno explain more about this, because I think this is a huge heritage from a North American perspective, at least. Going to Portugal and knowing more about the principles and the models have been game-changing without word trick. It has been very mind-blowing for me to understand more in depth what does it mean to talk about certain contents when you coach, and what does it refer to.
So at this perspective in Portugal, I'm not sure if you are aware of that, but there was a successful professor in university that developed a tactical prioritization, which looked at the game as a whole, not separating, not creating any kind of bridge between the football. So it actually came up from Descartes' perspective, from a long time ago, where, you know, if we separate our body systems, we will not understand the human being. So we need to understand them connected, interconnected to each other. And that's what from my experience working in Portugal and then bridging here, even in UK, I still don't think they are at the same level that is happening in Portugal, is about the training. The training is thought to develop certain principles that we want our players to work. Those can be can be individual principles, it can be sectorial principles, intrasectorial, intersectorial, or as a whole. So they look to understand the team and understand certain behaviors that can be then progressed or transferred to the match on the weekend. And I think it's from what you need to understand is to look at the training session, to look at what you want to develop for the weekend and break this through the week, never creating scenarios that do not provide players with the ability to keep thinking all the time. And just thinking about Gregory was just talking before about some previous scenarios of ball possession that we used to develop. My PhD thesis was all about ball possession, by the way. So I developed all of my PhD thesis on ball possession. Did that happen 10 years ago? If it was today, I would not be doing ball possession. I will be doing other things, because we progress, because we believe in other ways of playing football, and because of this, because the complexity that we as a person and as a human being are becoming, and these new generations are becoming more complex than what we used to be, and therefore I believe that later on, guys, have the opportunity to scan the paper that Gregory provided you, because this is a great opportunity for you to see. We are doing Gregory is doing a synthesis about this. But if you have the opportunity to look, to read, and understand the reasons behind the creation of this continuum, you will understand where or how you can integrate them as part of your work. And looking at this these 5 formats that Greg was telling, we can clearly develop any kind of the principles of game that we want to work, depending on what you want to work, depending on the players that you have in front of you, and they're also tactical knowledge.
That's brilliant. Going back to these models, ideas, principles, actions are the 4 families that in another paper that I'm writing with some other colleagues is when you teach contents, you can refer everything that you might say as a coach might assimilate to one of these families. And one interesting thing that Nuno mentioned about his work is everything is crafted around principles of play. So when you work in small groups, 4-on-4, 5-on-5, 5 as an intersector of 5 players within 11 against 11, most of the things should be tied around principles. Now, imagine that some principles could translate in some collective ideas that might not be for all the players. For example, the opposite fullback might not be involved in attacking on one side and switching to the other. That is provoking on one side, using the pass back to switch up to the other side. The opposite fullback might not be involved in that, but at least 4 or 5 players going from back to forward using the depth might be interested into translating the principles in something that can guide their intentions. And that is what the ideas is for. Basically, you could correct that, or you could cue it from the sidelines. And the models basically is a hierarchy of prioritization of all the principles. So when you teach the principles, you have a lot of principles. Within a microcycle, it can get very rich and very a lot of details. And then when you push your team, I would say, to perform or to play a certain way, you have to prioritize and distribute these principles in some moments. And this characterizes some models. So what we see basically is a link between these characters, these families, and the continuum of 5 formats that we've seen earlier. Just to notice that the principle of concentration, when you defend, what you want is more players in the axis between the ball and the goal. But the principle of concentration, beyond delay, beyond coverage, you have a concentration. In a 3v3 might be more difficult to appreciate concentration because you might not have enough players to participate or to operate this principle of concentration. This is why a 5-on-5, for example, 5 plus goalkeepers, might be more, it has a lot more potential to appreciate concentration, to coach it, to correct it. And obviously, a 5v5 versus a 3v3 in terms of comparison, it is different in terms of complexity. Moving forward, because we don't have that much more time, this is another topic that Nuno and I are working together in another scientific paper, is basically when you want to shape a platform activity, you begin from a thematic. This is, okay, guys, here, this is what we will be working on today. Exigencies, this is how working on this topic, this is what we want to achieve. We want some exigency, we want some demands. And the context of plays is more or less what we have been talking all through this presentation. And we observe that when we combine and when we drive, when we operate platform practice with combinations of them, it might be more content-driven, context-driven, or load-driven. But what we want to do is be more objective than that. We don't want 2 of the 3s or 1 of the 3. We want all 3 of them to drive platform practice towards objectively towards our targeted outcome. And this is purpose. Why are we doing this activity? So for example, you might just attune some actions for defending, attacking in some 2v2s. And then you go to SSCG, SSCG. And this SSCG, I like the purpose of awakening behaviors, because if you do well here with some actions and then you attune and the players are well warmed up, and then you awake some behaviors, it is more probable that this analytical or this condition game will roll out better because they're aware of the thematic, they're aligned with what you want to pursue, but also it is complementary. You have been growing in purpose, you have been progressing in purpose, and then you can pursue a more complex purpose in these formats of play because you have more players involved. And this is important in purpose because all exercises, all activities, all formats are not suitable for all the purposes. So before to close up our presentation, Nuno, anything to add to these two last slides?
Going back again what we said there before, repetition without repetition and simplification without taking the players out of their context, okay? Keep the context always alive. And again, reinforce what Gregory was saying. There are some opportunities to awake certain behaviors to then clearly develop them later on. Do not take any kind of practice. When you think about the football practice, never think about all of these purposes in every single session, every single design from your warm-up to your cool-down. I don't agree. I don't believe that warm-ups or cool-downs should be done in an isolated way from what we want. Particularly, you know, if you are working with youth development at the youth academy, where you have trainings twice, 3 times a week only, and you don't have enough time, sometimes 1 time a week, and then you don't have enough time to develop your game model or the way that you want your team to play.
So a framework that I was referring to at the very beginning could act as a cardinal point. We've seen here that the continuum of formats, they do act as a platform for repetition without repetition. And the more that we have progressed throughout the presentation, we have been proposing that some acts, some coaching acts, some coaching targets or objectives might be more compatible with some formats. So a framework would act as a cardinal point in the sense that if you want to simplify your job as a coach and your job as a designer of possibilities of play, you could just go with some logic and say, okay, well, if you want to focus on actions, probably opening a drill would be better. Just a starting point. Obviously, you can do actions in other context, but essentially, it has some great compatibilities throughout the continuum. Actions, attuning actions for open-ended drills. Principles, awakening or instill some auto-organization could be done in a SSCG, for example. Some ideas I was proposing, for example, attacking on one side, use the back pass to switch on the other side, testing and adapting this idea in an analytical game. Some models, right? If you want a hierarchy of some principles, you could adapt and maintain them through a condition game. And basically you can test the performance and prepare for the next game in a full game. That, however, is not something exclusive. These are merely some proposition of compatibilities that you can capitalize on, because all the silos, all the components that we've been exploring, they are tied together to result for better activities. Concluding, the exercise or I would say the objective of a framework would be to inform the design process to pull out the better outcomes. You could go from where to why, and that could follow just exclusively the periodization of load. You would have a microcycle, and you would have to fit your games depending on the load that you're targeting into these small boxes. This is, however, if your environment and your organization works this way. I take, for example, the university team that Nuno is coaching. Most probably, this is more suitable for him than my under 15 because we don't work yet like this. For under 12, I could say, okay, well, instead of going from where to why, I could answer the why first. Okay, I want to awaken some behaviors and I want to focus and invest in that for my 2 next session. So my why would be awakening session so that I can take these behaviors and then contextualize them in other context afterwards. And this is starting with why. So I will be more objectively compatible with these keywords if I start with why. And this is my conclusion. I would invite Nuno to add more stuff to have the last word. Basically, I think that the words of wisdom or to have a more broadened perspective on all this in his perspective. But definitely, I think that a framework or informing, as I say, informing the design process is something that is very difficult to do, but it is a great investment for any coach.
Start from the whole. It starts from the why, starting from, okay, what we want to do. And again, I'm finishing as well. I understand the time constraint by what Jose Mourinho did in Man United. So he stopped using GPSs on his training sessions because he didn't want to care at this stage about this load, about what Gregory was talking. He was caring about the quality of the training, about the players doing their best or developing the behaviors that he want to provide to them. And I think it's a strong message that it is a change in paradigm or across a kind of a starting a different view, particularly if you are always, if you always learn that running on the beach or running on the hill, it develops your aerobic endurance, and aerobic endurance is so important in football. Why we are not doing it, right? Maybe left, maybe rather than we are going on the right, let's go on the left and let's go on the beach. And that's something similar as Gregory was saying. Do start with the why, start with the whole, start with what you want to develop, and then look at the framework provided and have a go, because I honestly, I like the way that everything was put together, considering all the hot topics in research, considering all the theoretical framework that every kind of coach is using right now. And again, it's not only at the youth development level or the academy, but at the professional level. Every time I had a coach that spoke to me about small-sided games, and because he believed that small-sided game provide an ecological approach to the training. And coaches know nowadays, they understand the ecological dynamics, they understand how to manipulate constraints and how to keep practices game based and game related to what they want the team to achieve in the future. Be one of them.
As towards a great generation of coach, I think that thinking about all this has a lot of potential. So I will close this presentation and leave it to the last poll question. Amongst them, you can on the screen, you can click on any of these just to answer the question: to which context do you associate your current work as a coach? Your current work as a coach. So do you prefer, that is looping back to Nuno's position. So do you think, what is your opinion about the full game? And a wider question, if you want to associate your work to any of these format, could be a nice poll to finish up with. Valerio, up to you.
You want me to lead the poll?
Sorry, what's that?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You want me to click on one?
Yes, that'd be good. So if you can click on one, that is we'll see some results here. You would have to click on your screen though. So on the poll on the
There's a poll.
There's a poll. The first, yeah, there you go.
Oh, there it is. I see it now.
Yes.
It won't let me click. Have I clicked already, Greg?
Let me see.
But we don't know who was it, right?
Yeah, we don't know who's who. But if you go on the first, let me reopen this, and the first QR code. On the first QR code that I provided here, and you would have access to the poll.
Perfect. Thank you. Has everybody done it, Greg?
Yes, we've got 5 results now. 2 for the analytics, 2 for full game, 1 for the open and the drill. That's good. 6 now. Good.
Perfect. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Nuno.
Okay, was a pleasure to be here today and ending my day. I know that you potentially will still do a few more things today. That was nice. It was nice to finish a day.
Thank you very much to the both of you. Hopefully everybody enjoyed it. We will have this up in the next 30 days on our members only section of the of our website at nscac.ca. If you're not a current member, please do so you can access not only this webinar, but all the webinars we've had for the last 4 years. If you want to see our next one is on Thursday, March the 21st at 2 p.m. And we have a question. How do we follow the presenters? Do you guys want to put in the chat how someone can follow you?
So I am on the normal social media. So if you want to take a look at LinkedIn or the X now or Instagram, so just look at my name and it should come up there. But I will also include here as Greg was Gregory was doing. So yeah, did I answer?
Yes, I can see
Yeah.
your.
Yeah, and then again, just take a look at the work that we have been developing with Solent University, Southampton. If you just Google that, you will come up all of the stuff and the brand new research group that we just founded. So I will be more than happy to talk to you if you want to send me a message or something like that, or if you want to visit UK and Southampton.
Perfect. Thank you very much, guys, again. And to everybody, thank you very much and have a wonderful day.
Thanks to you all. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Bye.
Yeah.